So here we go with our program, and we've been waiting for this. I know I'm singing to the choir, but I just want to remind you of a few things. Native plant gardens require less water and no fertilizer or pesticides, or few pesticides, if any ever. They reduce air pollution and runoff. You're not running a mower, air pollution, and the runoff, the roots of the plants absorb the moisture, and the soil improves, and it prevents erosion. So both very good. Provide shelter and food for wildlife, obviously, especially the birds and butterflies, and promote biodiversity of all sorts. Provide entertainment for us when we see the butterflies, when we see the birds, it's entertainment. And education. We can learn about the native plants. We can learn more about nature and how it works. And provides beauty, and that can be throughout the seasons. Requires planning, so everyone should have their garden plan on paper before you plant. And it requires patience, because some of the plants take maybe 3 or even 5 years to really establish and show off their beauty. So as we said, you have to consider the sunlight, soil and soil moisture, the spacing, form, and height, the bloom time, and you want a succession of blooms, very important to the pollinators. The numbers of each plant that you want to consider. If you want to do like 10 plants really close together and let them support each other, or if you want maybe 5 here and 5 there of the same species. All kinds of decisions, and all of that information can be guided for you from that sheet that Carrie showed you. Formal or natural, make it look planned no matter what, even if it's a natural meadow type of garden. And you can do that by creating an edge. And one edge that's recommended is the prairie drop seed, that it's a short grass that's pretty, and it lasts. It's even pretty in the wintertime. So, I mean, that's one that you could add around the edge. And of course, rocks or whatever else. Winter beauty is something to consider, because you want to leave stuff in the garden through the winter. So consider that too. And structure plants. That's something I had never heard talked about, but I heard a program a week ago, and it was excellent. And structure plants are your anchors for the garden. They're the plants that look good most of the time, most of the year. So those are anchors. And then everything else goes between, the things that bloom in the spring and you never see them again. The things that bloom in the summer, the things that bloom in the fall, but there are structure plants, and some of those don't bloom till the fall, but they're a structure plant because their vegetation is so attractive. That's the asters, structure plants. See, I've got a list of structure plants. Rattlesnake master is one, Joe Pyeweed, wild blue indigo, early fall sunflower are all structure plants. So those are things to consider. Layers of plants. You want, your taller plants, then your medium size, and then your shorter plants. And if you have trees or shrubs, those go behind the taller plants. So the taller plants also have deeper roots. They usually have tap roots. The medium-sized ones have roots that are a few feet deep, and then the shallower root ones are the shorter ones. So there's layers both above ground and below ground. And you might want a vertical layer, like a vine or something to go up a trellis, or a filler layer, something that will kind of travel through the garden at will, naturalize, and will just kind of fill in. And scale. A garden that is 8 feet wide should have nothing taller than 4 feet. So height at half the width of the bed. and make it look planned. I repeat, make it look planned. Create that edge. And you can either mulch or you can plant close and you might not have to mulch at all. And as far as mulch, leaves are better than wood chips. So now are you ready? I hope you learned a little bit from some of that, or it made you think anyway. Now think about your garden, think about your space. There are all kinds of gardens, all kinds of ways to do them. So the new plants, 2021, here we come. And the first one is anise or lavender hyssop. And we've offered this before, and it is a butterfly magnet. And it's outstanding. So, and all of the information about it is in the tables that Carrie so wonderfully crafted. I do note that it's a biennial, but it self-seeds. So if it's a biennial and it self-seeds, you don't need to worry about having to replant it every 2 years. And if you cut it back in the spring, you'll get a shorter, bushier plant that will have more blooms. Now, if any, you all should be muted at this time. And if you have something really important to add, please unmute yourself and say something before I go to the next slide. If you can wait until the very end, you could put it in the chat box, or you could write it down on a piece of paper, and when we're discussing things at the end, you could add that. So I'll move on. Lead plant. That is, it's a Les Hills prairie shrub, and it's very well behaved. It's very small, maybe 18 inches tall, and it needs well-drained soil, but it's an excellent, excellent shrub to have. Meadow anemone. I think we have not offered that before. It has lots of blooms. It can overpower smaller plants, and it is a great ground cover. So plan where you want to have it. And it creates, the lower photo there shows, you can just have a whole bunch of it with all those white blooms, and it's just really attractive. And the pasque flower is something that has always been so special for the Les Hills. It's a Les Hills native, and it's only on the hilltops mainly of the Les Hills. And that's one thing with Carrie and me when we're doing the research. We don't have much research the stuff to look up available for Iowa. Other states have wonderful wildflower sites, and like Minnesota, Illinois, Missouri, and Kansas, but I haven't found one yet that's really good for Iowa. So because those are different geographic regions, some of them have differing opinions. Like some might say that it's difficult to grow, and I've kind of heard that it was difficult to grow, but I think it was Illinois said it's a wonderful garden plant. Wonderful. So, I mean, if you would like that one, because it's very special, and historically in Sioux City, the old timers, those that are older than I am even, remember when there were pockets of prairie with pasque flowers commonly in areas of Sioux City. Like above where Baumgart's is, just south of where 18th Street becomes 19th Street, that hillside had pasque flowers. Not anymore. So it's really, really attractive and very tiny. Wild columbine likes all kinds of different sunlight. It blooms early, is very delicate. The leaves are very attractive, and it is a Les Hills native. And it's a favorite for shady and part shade gardens. And it's on the list for recommendations for those types of gardens all the time. So it's beautiful. And hummingbirds love it. Hummingbirds love things that are red, number one, but here's this early thing blooming that's got red, and it's delicate, and they can get their nectar from it. Now, the milkweeds are very important, and we're offering 3 types of milkweeds. So those, you can look at the chart that we provided, and you can try to decide which milkweeds you could add. Now, this one is not showy, but monarchs really do like it, and it's got larger leaves that monarchs really do like. And because it's easier for them to lay their eggs and guarantee that their caterpillar is going to have plenty of leaf to eat when it comes out. And this is a very fragrant one. And this is a new offering. We've never offered this before. And this one is also special because it likes some shade. The swamp or rose milkweed, we've offered many times and we'll continue to offer it. It's an excellent milkweed. And it's the favorite, supposedly, for egg laying for monarchs. It does prefer moist soils, and it also is very fragrant. And butterfly milkweed, everybody knows that. It's the most well-known of the milkweeds. It's beautiful orange flowers. It needs well-drained soil, and it's the best milkweed for bees. And it can create a mound after it's established and get more stems and stuff. It kind of creates a mound. Now the asters, we chose 4 asters. And this year we've added more, you may have noticed, of the plants that like shade or part shade. And so this aster prefers partial shade. And it's called calico because the blooms are different colors at different times. They move from white or yellow to purplish red. And all of those can be on the same plant at the same time because of different times of maturing of the blooms. And it can be cut short and will still bloom. And it's recommended for bee lawns in Minnesota so that you can have it mowed and it'll still bloom. The aromatic, I can't see the top of my page. New England aster is, again, a wonderful aster. And remember these asters like this?
Aromatic.
It is aromatic, okay.
Sorry,
that is all hidden from me, unfortunately. Okay, aromatic aster, it's short, not aggressive. It's a very late bloomer. It can sometimes still be blooming when there's snow on the ground. I've seen it still have a few blooms at the beginning of November. And it creates a very nice mound. And so this is one of those anchor plants. It looks beautiful all summer long. And then it blooms at the end of the season. And then it feeds the birds in the wintertime with its seeds. So it's an excellent plant. I love it. Here's a New England aster. And again, an anchor plant. And if you don't like it as being as tall as it can get, you can cut it back in the spring and it will be a shorter, fuller, bushier plant. So that's up to you. And Shorts aster is, again, this is an aster that likes more shade. And we offered it last year, so this is the second year to offer it. So some people might have some experience with it. It goes to about 3 feet tall, and it's a host plant for the silvery checker spot and the pearl crescent. False indigo, blue false indigo, or what we call baptisia. A lot of us call it that. It is shrub-like, and it's very pretty leaves and pretty flowers, and it is also a structural plant. Looks good all season. Hairy wood mint is new. And as you know, probably mints can be somewhat aggressive. So it would probably spread, and it spreads by rhizomes. But it's supposed to be manageable. According to the sources that we read, it's considered to be manageable. It likes moist, rich soil. Remember, when we're adding these woody plants, we didn't have very many woody plants here. We were almost all prairie. So if you're doing a woodland garden, they're going to require a little bit more moisture than your other plants, and maybe richer soil to be more like what they need. Tall bellflower. It's popular for shade and part shade gardens. It's a biennial. It's a butterfly magnet. It was a savanna species, and it is native to Woodbury County and all of Iowa. Kids like to call it the elephant plant because of it looks like the elephant's trunk coming out of the middle of the flower. Plains oval sedge, an anchor plant. That's Carrie's plains oval sedge, a photo of that taken just 2 weeks ago. And it's an anchor plant that keeps its shape and is attractive even in the snow. And sedges are very important for birds and wildlife. And the other sedge that we offer is one that can even act like a ground cover. It can be encouraged to spread across the ground. So, and we have not offered that one before, although we did offer the oval plains oval sedge before. New Jersey tea. I pointed out lead plant before. This is another native prairie shrub. We have 2 different species of it, and this one is less common in the Luss Hills and more common to the east, but it is found in the Luss Hills. And it's a small round shrub, and you need to protect it in its first years of growth because rabbits love it. We're offering 2 coreopsis species, the lance-leaf coreopsis and the prairie coreopsis. They look very similar. They both have blooms at the end of a stem. And that means that when you've got a plant that has a bloom at the end of a stem, it might benefit from having others planted more closely around it to lend support and to add a grouping so that you don't just have one plant there with one bloom. So it's recommended this way. And they're each about 2 feet tall, and they bloom at a good time in the summer before the other yellow sunflowers and everything. So they kind of offer a yellow plant for the middle of the summer.
Diane, I just want to add on the coreopsis that the first one you showed, the lance leaf, that will bloom probably about a week or two prior to the next one that you're going to show, the prairie coreopsis. So if you're looking to extend the season, you can plant both of them. The other thing in my garden is the lance leaf coreopsis only grows to be maybe a foot, foot and a half tall, and the prairie coreopsis gets up to about 2.5 feet. So it's a little bit taller. So slight differences, both awesome plants.
Right. And I have the prairie coreopsis growing naturally out in my prairie. Purple prairie clover, what a beauty. And it has many positive attributes, and the leaves and the flowers are attractive, and it likes any well-drained soil. It's about 2 feet tall. Note that it on the list it might say that it's deer resistant, but I guess it isn't. Elisa has had trouble with deer eating it. However, I have a whole bunch of it on the north side of my house, and deer do not eat mine. So again, two different situations.
Yeah, I'd like to speak to that too. I was talking to my husband the other day about how so many of the plants on our list were said by a resource to be deer resistant, and I suspect maybe they just wanted to sell more plants. So.
And we know if deer are hungry,
That's right.
they're going to eat it anyway, right?
Mm-hmm.
So, okay. And pale purple coneflower, another beauty. They're about 3 feet tall, very delicate petals, attract a lot of insects. And I would recommend grouping them because they again are a stem with a flower at the top. So I would recommend grouping them so that they kind of lend each other's support. And then the outstanding rattlesnake master. Everybody loves this one because it's so unique. The lower left photo shows you the leaves that look like yucca, and it's Eryngium yuccifolium is its Latin name. So it's just really a cool plant, and it can reach 3 to 4 feet tall, oftentimes less if it's in a dry area. And it's a structure plant because it's attractive all year and all winter. So it's one of those anchors. So I highly recommend it. Now we have 2 Joe Pye weeds, and you can decide which Joe Pye would do better in your garden. This is the purple Joe Pye, and this is the spotted Joe Pye. So this one is adaptable to many soils and average to wet soil moisture, and the other one just goes to moist soil moisture. And the purple Joe Pye weed will do well in moist, average, or dry soils, whereas the other likes wet or moist soils. They're both about 4 feet tall. This is a new addition this year, the wild strawberry. It's a very adaptable to soil and moistures and to amount of sun. It can be used in your garden to naturalize between plants. So that would be like a filler plant. And it is, of course, a Les Hills native. Wild geranium is an early blooming plant, and it's a woodland garden must, either shade or part shade. It spreads by its seed pods explode when ripe. Leaves don't look as good later in the season, so be sure to plant something that looks good later in the season next to it, so it doesn't detract from your garden. Sneezeweed. It has various other names too, but sneezeweed is the main name, but it does not cause sneezes. It's up to 4 feet tall. It's insect pollinated, not wind pollinated, so that's why it does not cause allergies. It tolerates better water conditions than most plants that we offer, but it's okay with average soil moisture. The false sunflower is also called early sunflower, oxeye. We have it listed as early false oxeye sunflower. It's mainly early sunflower. I don't know. That's the problem with common names. And it can be up to 5 feet tall, but in my location, it's only like 3 feet tall. And it's a short-lived perennial. So it might fade out after several years if it's not in an ideal place or kept from actually dying out. Just note that. The meadow blazing star, that's a picture of my meadow blazing star. I had it for several years, but it did not continue because my garden is very, very, very dry. And so it did not persist. But I really highly recommend it. And this is one that this Kansas person that was doing a webinar said that if with Liatris, he would plant up to 30 in a small area just because they're so spectacular. I don't think you want to order 30 of those, but do order a group and do plant them quite close together. Everybody loves this one, the great blue lobelia, beautiful blue. It wants wet to average soil moisture, can be about 3 feet tall and can spread. And I say, boy, I'll let it spread. That's my opinion. It is found in western Iowa, including Woodbury County. Wild lupin or lupine, 2 foot tall, attractive blooms and leaves, spreads by rhizomes, and seed heads explode when ripe, so it also spreads by seed. It likes well-drained soil. Its leaves show late season stress. So this is another one where you would want to have another plant that looks good later in the season next to where you plant this one. And many of these comments are right from the comment sheet. So you have access to almost everything I'm saying. You've got access to all of these, the slides and the comments. So you don't need to be taking a lot of notes, but I'm bringing all this to mind anyway. Wild bergamot is spectacular, and it's one of those that would be good back by the in the backyard, along the fence, or by the alley, because it can spread, and it's wonderful for pollinators. So I really highly recommend it. But it's better in an informal garden with similar plants. I have an idea about plants that you could put in the back in such an area with the Monarda, New England aster, gray head coneflower, Monarda, wild blue indigo, and then grasses, Joe Pye weeds, and plains opal sedge. Those could all be in a semi-naturalized area and let them duke it out as far as which ones are going to survive.
Diane, I have a question.
Mm-hmm.
Is the bergamot, does that smell like the scent of bergamot that you would get like from an essential oil?
Probably.
I think it's similar. It is used for tea, and I'll take this opportunity to share that I did get an extensive list of native and traditional and culinary uses for some of these plants, but I did not have time to get it incorporated or proofread or anything. If that's something you're interested in, get a hold of me privately, and we can maybe share that information, because it's just it's not ready for prime time. But it may be helpful information if that's something you're looking for.
Yeah, so you can use it for tea, and New Jersey tea can also be used for tea. And yes, it has a very nice scent and minty too, fragrance. Yellow or gray-headed coneflower. Whoops. Jacob's ladder. Oh, just a minute. There we are. Okay. Jacob's ladder is a new addition. It's only about 12 inches tall. It's very early. Notice the leaves are very attractive. It likes moist, rich soil, as it's a woodland plant, and recommended to plant closely together. It's a spring ephemeral, so you're going to see it in the spring, and then it's going to be bye. Mountain mint. Its blooms last extra long. Yeah, they can last for about a month, so that's a nice attribute. It can be about 3 feet tall. I've seen it form clumps like this, almost like a bush in the lower photo, and I've seen just single plants where it blooms like that. So depends upon where you're putting it, and it can be a structure plant too, kind of like an anchor, because of the leaves look good and the flowers last a long time. So that's good. Now the yellow coneflower, also known as gray head coneflower. Can be about 4 to 5 feet tall. It's planted in many prairie reconstructions, and at first the prairie reconstruction will be loaded with these flowers. But gradually, as the other prairie plants get established, this one goes out. So again, that might happen with your garden, depending upon the nature of your garden. Or if you have it just in an isolated place, maybe it'll continue to hang on for many years. And it does bloom the first year and is very much liked by pollinators. And black-eyed Susan, again, it's only about 2 feet tall, and it's an excellent choice for the first year planting of a wildflower garden. You'll have success with it, and you could also do it with seed, and we had seed available at the exchange. It will reseed itself, even though it could be an annual or a biennial or a short-lived perennial. You know, how confusing can that get? But it does reseed, so it's something that's really attractive, small, and and nice. And it is a Los Angeles Prairie native. Wild petunia. Well, we heard from someone in one of our members that her wild petunia kind of got out of hand. It was kind of aggressive in her garden. I think she must have a really rich garden. My wild petunia has spread a bit. It spreads by seed, but hardly any. I mean, I'm happy to see a wild petunia. So it just depends upon your garden. But if you have a really rich garden, maybe keep an eye on it, or maybe just plant it along the edge, because it's a really good edge, one for edges, and keep an eye on it. Little blue stem, of course, we've offered before, and it's considered a structure plant. Of course, it's a grass, and it looks good. I mean, and the seed, you know, those fluffy seeds are very attractive later in the year, and the color later in the year is excellent. It's kind of like a coppery crimson, and the color stays pretty much through the winter. And bumblebee queens overwinter at the base of little blue stem. And little blue stem is one of those middle plants, like if you're taller, middle, and shorter, the little blue stem is considered to be a middle plant. Royal catchfly is obviously gorgeous, and obviously, since it's red, it's a hummingbird magnet. It likes rocky prairies and open woods and rocky glades, so it likes places, you know, where the soil is rocky or sandy, but it can do okay with medium soil. And in some places, it's on an endangered species list for some states. And it looks great when it's blooming, but otherwise the vegetation, you won't even notice it really. So it's not an anchor plant. It's just a spectacular red blooming plant. This is a new addition this year, zigzag goldenrod. And again, this is one that likes shade, but it tolerates sun. So it's very adaptable that way. And it can be aggressive. So one source said that it really wouldn't be suitable for small woodland gardens. So if you have a larger one where you can allow it to expand, or maybe in the backyard underneath some trees or shrubs you plant, maybe that would be a good place, and you can let it naturalize. And stiff goldenrod, and remember, goldenrods get the bad name for allergies and stuff, but it's the ragweed that blooms at the time of this goldenrod, so you don't have to worry about allergies with either of these. So stiff goldenrod is a native to our prairies here, and it's about 4 feet. On a dry side, it could be shorter than that. It's a structure plant, so you could add this to your backyard with some of those other taller plants, and you could also have it in strategic places in your garden as an anchor. Remove seed heads to control its spread, because it will spread, and you can cut it back in June and make it be bushier, etc., and shorter. Prairie dropseed, and that is another anchor plant, and it can be used as an edge to a garden, because the seed heads aren't going to be that visible earlier, and you just have the green mound. And it's native to the Los Hills, so at least to a few of the Los Hills counties, not Woodbury, but that doesn't matter. Ohio spiderwort. It can be aggressive in small gardens. It spreads by seed, but may rebloom in the fall after a first bloom early in the summer. And it blooms in the morning, and the petals literally liquefy and melt and drop by around noon. So, but it's a beautiful plant, and I don't care when I see it popping up in a new place myself. Prefers part shade. Lost Hills native. And surprise, not so, this has already been announced, we're offering trees and shrubs from the Iowa Forest Nursery. They sell their trees in bundles, and who wants to get 25 or something? So we will order them, and then we will divide them up, and you saw that they are on the order form. And we want you to be sure to attend the Zoom program on February 21st, when Dave and Dottie talk about the importance of these trees and shrubs, especially to pollinators, to the caterpillars, to the birds. I am not going to read all this. That'd be crazy. You've got access to what I took this information from. So we've got all three or more of the shrubby ones or small trees. And then the last one is the bur oak, is actually, you know, Doug Tallamy's favorite is the oaks. They host over 300 caterpillar species. They're very slow growing. So if you have patience and you are looking into the future, oak is the way to go, because there's diversity-wise, they're amazing.
Yeah, and if you don't mind, Diane, I'd like to give a shout out for the oak too. It's, you know, the oak doesn't need to be 20 feet tall before the caterpillars start moving in.
Sure.
The birds start moving in. So, I mean, it'll start, you know, supporting biodiversity, you know, maybe not year one, but, you know, within a couple of years. And in my resources, you know, I give some examples of some of the bur oaks from within a couple of hours of here, and how slowly they grow. So you could put one, you know, in your landscape, and, you know, make it the next owner's problem. but at least you're contributing to, you know, you're supporting biodiversity here right now.
Right, and do consider too that they spread horizontally. They have horizontal branches lower down, so you know you're going to have some space being taken up with this. So especially if you have room somewhere, go for it. Even if you can't let it reach maturity in your lifetime. So why we like native gardens: the butterflies, the beauty, the interest, the less work once established, eco-friendly, and they are so much fun. So thank you. And now we will entertain conversation and stuff about these, and see what was entered in the chat that Carrie or Elisa can share. So thank you.